So about 17 years ago, I was a young IT professional attending one of these large Microsoft conferences, and I was gearing up for Exchange 2000, going to do a migration from 5.5 to 2000, and there was a session at that conference by Tony Redmond about best practices for administering Exchange, and I was pretty excited for that. So sit down in the audience, he starts the presentation with a question. He says, how many of you come in every day and read the logs on your Exchange server? A bunch of hands in the audience go up, and he addresses all those folks directly and goes, you're all liars. Right? It was a crystallizing moment for me as a young professional. There's an attention to detail that you've got to have to do this job well. And it's a great moment for me to be up on the stage here all these years later and offer you a chance to win a copy of Tony Redmond's new book. You've heard it probably a couple of times this week already, but if you haven't got a chance to enter into that drawing, come see me afterwards, give me a business card, and we'll get you into the drawing for his book there. My name is Jeff Kisner. I'm a program manager in the Exchange product group. And I work in a team called Enterprise Cloud, which is slightly different than some of the other component teams. You've got teams that focus on specific technologies. You've got an ecosystem team that runs all of our APIs, and you've got the store team, and all these other teams that you're familiar with. Mine's a little bit different in that I don't focus on a specific technology in particular. What I look at is scenarios, and I look at customer segments. So typically I'm looking at large customers, large enterprises, regulated markets, government customers. And I find that these are a set of customers that have some unique requirements and need a little bit more than what we potentially can provide in the service today or what you've seen in the past. And so when I think about planning the features that my team is going to work on, these are the types of customers that I'm focused on. And then I think about them in three different aspects. I look at them from adoption. Right? What is it that they need to adopt Exchange Online in the first place? When I go and talk to them, they say, we can't. We're blocked because of X, Y, Z. So what are the adoption blockers? What are the features that we need to unblock adoption for these customer sets? After we've unblocked their ability to move, we want them to move quickly. How can we get them to consume the service as fast as possible? I don't want to see them set up hybrid, move one mailbox, and then 10 months later we've got 10 mailboxes and it's slow and they're just trying to get their way through. I want to see customers move 1, 10, 100, 1,000 in a matter of days and weeks, right? Move faster. And then the last bit is once you're in there, how do you get the most out of it? How do you thrive out of your experience? How do you get the most out of Exchange Online? So that's the way I think about planning work for my team overall and what we're investing in into the future. And so what I wanted to do today is take the covers off some of the things that we've been working on and give you a little bit of a future glimpse into the roadmap in this feature set. And I planned all of that around three major categories here. The first one is I'll call service control. So there's a couple of features that allow you to control the service experience, the end user experience in some ways that you haven't seen before within Exchange Online. Second one is a large category, hybrid. We've got some really interesting stuff going on in this space. I think you'll be pretty happy to see our roadmap here. And the last bit is M&A. So I'll ask a question here. In reading the session synopsis, how many people are in this room just because I wrote that I'm going to give you a first look at tenant-to-tenant move tech? Yeah, that's what I thought. All right, so you all have to wait till the end because that comes last. All right. So let me start with a real simple feature here. Mailbox Plans is something that you all know. It's in the service. It's been there for a long time. This is what allows you to customize, let's say, quotas. As you provision mailboxes into the service and you don't want the default 100 gig quota, I don't know why, but some people don't, you can go in, customize that, customize deleted item retention here. And I talked to a lot of customers over the last several years. They said, we need a little bit more. And one of the real common asks was, I want to make sure that when my mailboxes are provisioned into the service, when they land in the service, that POP and IMAP are disabled. That is anathema to us. Absolutely don't enable POP and IMAP. So we looked at this and we said, what's it going to take to do something like this? Mailbox Plans already exists, and we could probably extend that. And we had so many customers asking for this, and we found that the work required to do this was so small, we went out and did it. And we just did a small amount of changes here. We extended set mailbox plans so that you can add retention policies to this. So if you want to provision a mailbox into the service with a very specific retention policy, I think they're saying they can't hear a little bit. If you can turn the volume up. If you want to provision mailboxes into the service with a retention policy, specific retention policy, you can add that now to the mailbox plan. We also opened up set CAS mailbox plan, and there are just a handful of parameters we added to this: active sync, IMAP, POP, and an OA mailbox policy. So if you, again, want to provision mailboxes into the service with very specific settings, POP or IMAP disabled, a specific OA mailbox policy, active sync disabled, you can do that now just by modifying the mailbox plans, or in this case, set CAS mailbox plan is now available to you. We kind of released this quietly. It's been in the service since about January of this calendar year, and we did it quietly just to see who would find it and start using it. This isn't game-changing, this isn't revolutionary, but I wanted to lead off with this as an example of the work that my team does and how we think about features. This was super important to a lot of customers, right? And a lot of customers said, we're going to slow our adoption of the service because we have to plan for, let's say, post-processing. We have to do a lot of extra provisioning work to make sure we can do something as simple as keeping POP off all the time, not even a second of time where POP is enabled in the service. Right? So if you take away nothing from today, your takeaway should be that there's a team out there that's thinking about broad scenarios for enterprise customers like yourselves and looking to build those features within the service. So let's go to something a little bit more interesting. There's a feature called client access rules that we've been developing for a little while, and we're expecting to bring this to general availability over the next quarter. It'll come out to first release in Q4, and then we'll start rolling this out worldwide. What this feature does, I think is anybody else still having trouble hearing? This side of the room has got a problem. You got it? All right, they're working on it. All right, so feature called client access rules. We'll say this empowers how customers control their end user access to the service. And at the surface, that sounds a lot like conditional access. Conditional access exists. You've got ADFS client policies. You've got AAD conditional access. As we talk to a lot of customers, financial services customers, government customers in particular, they had one very specific challenge with the features that exist today for conditional access, is that they are not 100% foolproof when they're looking to control access based on, let's say, location or IP address. And the challenge that those features have is that they only work at the time of authentication. So as an end user, at the time you authenticate, you go to Azure Active Directory for an auth token, you go to ADFS for an auth token, and the policies there will interrogate your IP address, the source IP address of your client, and decide whether or not to issue you an auth token. Okay, that's great. Now let's say they issue you an auth token because you're at an approved IP address. Right? You close your laptop, you exit the building, you walk down the street to a coffee shop, you spin up your session or turn on your laptop onto a public Wi-Fi network. That auth token is still valid, and you still have access to Office 365, and you can continue your session there, even though you are now at an unapproved IP address, an unapproved location. And we have a lot of customers that say, this is a problem for us. This gap is a problem for us. Right? So we built client access rules to help solve this problem. And the major difference here is that this engine is built into Exchange. So we can interrogate every single end user session that comes to Exchange. Right? And so if you are then coming from an unapproved IP address in the scenario I'm talking about, we can look at that and say, this doesn't meet the allowed rule set, and go ahead and reject that session. Right? So this is something that we've been working on, and this will start to roll out, as I said, over Q4 of this calendar year. What this does effectively is enable these commonly requested scenarios, is allow your branch site to connect over the internet, block everybody else from accessing over the internet. We want to make sure the main branches come in through express route, whatever it happens to be, but we've got a small satellite out there, say, allow those to come in over the internet. Restrict access to only a specific IP address. This is fairly common for a lot of customers that run mobile device managers that want to proxy ActiveSync through that MDM. They want to make sure that you can only come in ActiveSync protocols through that IP address. So they'll use client access rules for this. Right? And you can get a little bit more granular about user populations with some of the filtering I'll show you in a minute here. The criteria you've got in here, the rule sets, we'll call them predicates, source IP address. It's the most commonly one used here. But you can also include protocols and workloads and mix and match. So you can allow, let's say, OA from anywhere, and then restrict ActiveSync from a specific set of IP addresses. So you can mix and match rules with different predicates, IP addresses, protocols, et cetera. We've got some recipient filters in here, so you can do groups of users based on some property like title or custom attribute 1 or 2, and then you can even get as granular as username. This is all self-service within Exchange Online, and as of today, there's PowerShell-only administration. Right? So let's take a look at what this actually looks like. I've got a PowerShell session open to my tenant here, and I've just done a get client access rule, and you see I've got 5 rules that I've created here. As a tenant, you're allowed 20 rules, and you can create up to 20, you can mix and match, you can do whatever you want here. Each rule in the list has a priority from 1 to 20. When we evaluate rules, we start at priority 1, and then we go down the list. As soon as we find a rule that matches the session that is coming in, we'll apply the action for that rule, which is block or allow, right? And then we stop processing more rules. So it's really important to get the ordering of your rules correctly, right? What you'll notice here, and if you just take my word for what's underneath each rule, just looking at the titles here, you'll notice my first rule here is always allow PowerShell, right? So I've got a rule here that always allows PowerShell from any location. This is super important. I cannot stress this enough. There is no backdoor to this feature for you. So if you create a rule that blocks every protocol, including PowerShell, from every location, every IP address, you have effectively locked you and all of your users out of your tenant. Right? If you do that, you can call support. We can get in and create a new allow only PowerShell rule that will allow you to get back in and then modify the rules so and block yourselves. But what I tell customers when they start to evaluate this is, while you're crafting your rule sets, while you're testing them out, create that first priority 1 rule that allows PowerShell from everywhere, right? Then create all of your other rules, test it out, and then go back and modify that PowerShell rule if you want to do that, right? Be very careful here. So let's take a look at what one of these rules looks like. I'll look at the allow EAS. So what you'll notice here in the allow EAS from approved locations is I've got, this is enabled, so enabled is true and false. There's a Boolean there, and you can create rules in a disabled state and evaluate them. My action here is allow access. Your 2 options are allow access, deny access. And then you'll see I've got a whole bunch of predicates, any of client IP addresses or ranges. Right? So this is where you would put all of the allowed IP addresses for this particular rule. Right? You could go the other way and say, I want to allow ActiveSync from anywhere except a set of IP addresses. In that case, you could say, create a rule that has an action of deny access and use the except any of client IP addresses or ranges and say, that means if you're coming from those, we'll allow ActiveSync, but from nowhere else. And then any of protocols is Exchange ActiveSync. So you see we've got a number of protocols here, and we talked about those. When we go evaluate those rules, we evaluate these predicates as an and condition. Every predicate that you use here, IP address, protocol, username, however many you use in each individual rule, needs to evaluate to true. And if they all evaluate to true for the session that we're looking at, then we apply that rule. If it evaluates to false at all, then we'll skip that one, go down to the next rule in the list, and move on. Right? So you notice I've got a rule here that says block OA for ICM2. That's a rule that I put on a specific user account to block OA. I've created a rule that blocks everything for that same account. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So again, the rule is very simple. It's a deny access if username matches ICM2, right? And I put it on the OA protocol. And you attempt to log in here, right? And you get an error message. So this would fire if this user moved from an approved IP address and had a valid authentication token to, let's say, that coffee shop network. The second that user tries to connect again and reestablish its session, even though that auth token is valid, it would fire and we would throw this error message out to the user. Right? So as I said, that'll roll out. You'll start to see that in your tenants, first release tenants over the next quarter, and then the rest of the service worldwide after that. So the next feature I want to talk about comes to something that I call the classification problem. Once we got past location-based access and strict conditional access, we had a set of customers that said, I can't move to Office 365 because of OA. And in particular, I have third-party software, I've got homegrown software that forces my users to classify messages or put something in particular into their messages before they're allowed to send it. And they cannot hit the send button. The send button won't work. It's something called block on send. And this has been done for years. There's third-party software that many financial services, government customers, again, have all used for years. You know the names. And the way those have worked in OWA is by being installed on the server themselves and modifying ASPX and JavaScript files directly on the server. So we ran into a problem with this. We ran into a problem in two places. Obviously, within the service, we don't allow all of you to install your software and modify files on the servers themselves, right? So any software, third-party software that requires that isn't going to function in Office 365. We also had a set of customers that said, I'm staying on Exchange 2010 on-prem because of the same problem. We re-architected OA going into 2013, and those third-party applications that modified ASPX didn't work anymore. So we have a set of customers that said, I'm not upgrading from Exchange 2010 on-prem, and I certainly can't go to the cloud because of this strict requirement. That's the classification problem. So we started looking into this, and we said, what can we do to solve this problem? We talked to customers. We said, well, why isn't this transport rules? Why isn't this DLP? And they said, no, it has to happen at the time you push the send button. The user has to know that that message, there's something wrong with it before they attempt to send it. We don't want it to go out, hit the transport pipeline, get them an NDR sometime later. One of the common scenarios we got from some of the defense customers that I talked to said, think about this in, let's say, a forward operations zone and they're getting shelled. They need to get that message out at the last minute. They need to know when they push the send button that that message is gone. And you can certainly argue that email's probably not a command and control service, right? I would argue that, but they were super adamant about this. So we started to look into how to solve this problem, and we started to look at OA in particular, because there are still ways for third-party softwares to hook into the Outlook COM object model, even within Office 365. So we wanted to solve this problem in OA first, and we looked at the Outlook extensibility platform, and in particular, we looked at add-ins, right? How can you bring apps directly into email? So this is not a talk about add-ins, but just a quick refresher for you. This is a web app that you've created that has a set of instructions, manifests some logic for the client, and then that equals your add-in. And you can load this as an end user. You can load this as an administrator to your users. How many people have used add-ins? Yeah, okay. So we started looking at building an add-in to solve this particular problem. Let's see if we can demo this one. So what I've done is created an add-in here that will do this block on send. And I've applied it to this particular mailbox in my tenant. It's a real simple add-in, and I'll show you what it looks like once we see if we can get it to work a first time. All right. So let's create a new message. Hopefully. Or not. All right, we'll come back to that. Let's take a look at what this actually is. So here's our manifest here. It's a very simple, we've named it message body checker, right? And as an admin, I've installed this into the tenant, and I've made this a required app for all of my users, right? What you'll see in here is we've got the source location, so we've published this app out in Azure, and there's our HTML. So within that HTML, you'll notice we have a reference to our JavaScript file, and that's where all of the instructions, that's where all of the good logic here happens. Right down at the bottom of that JavaScript file is really what we're doing here. So as I said, we called it message body checker, and we created just a simple demo here that looks at the body of the message and looks for two words, sensitive and classified. And if it finds those, right, decides it's going to block the message. So let's go back, let's see if OA has warmed up. There we go. All right, so let's send a message out to me at Microsoft. We're going to do a test message, and we'll say this is classified, and click send. You'll notice, if you caught that real quick, there was a little warning, there was a message that said the message body checker is processing this message. So anytime you run one of these on-send events that go and try to block send, if it takes too long to process, we'll throw that briefly in the bar. So we want to let you and your users know it's that particular add-in that's causing this UI experience, this O experience to be slow here. But then what you'll notice is that add-in has thrown an error. The message body checker is blocking this email from being sent. Sensitive or classified information has been found in the body. Please make sure it's removed. Now this is a super simple demo here, right? All we've done is added the events. We've added the APIs that your developers, third-party apps can develop on top of. Actually, I'm going to go back and show you one more thing before we go back to the presentation. So you can build on top of this, and imagine you can build as much business logic into this as you like, right? All we did is put simple toolbar message there, but if you want to build in some other contextual menus into the O experience, if you want to go and have the app automatically change the message, automatically change the subject, that's the logic you can build into. So we've just added a couple of APIs so you can hook onto item send events here. So the way that this gets applied to users is a new property we've added to OA mailbox policies. So I've got one here that's called block, and I'll go on send. So we've added a property called on-send events enabled here when this pops up. Right? So once you install this app, what you do is assign it to individual users and then assign them an OA mailbox policy that has on-send add-ins enabled as true. So once you have the app, assign it to users as a mandatory installation, and then have them on an OA mailbox policy with this, that app will start to take effect. Okay. So there's a couple of things to remember about on-send events here. There's a couple of limitations. First off, you cannot publish an app with an on-send event to the Office store, right? If you try to publish into the Office store and have this go out to users, it will get rejected by the store validation. So this is an admin-driven function, and we want to be very careful about customers using this. We want it to be mindful, which is why we're limiting them from the store. Right? Within your apps, within your manifest, you can only have one item send event per add-in. Now you can have multiple item send add-ins, and you can apply them all to an individual user or sets of users, but only one item send add-in event per add-in. The order in which you install these, if you do multiple ones, is important as well, because we will process them in order, and you can potentially run into a scenario in which the actions that these two add-ins might take will conflict. Right? So you want to have the order in the right processing for the outcome you want to achieve. So for example, let's say you've got two add-ins, and the first add-in says, this message is fine, I'm going to let it go through. The second add-in changes the subject of the message for whatever reason. And whatever it changes the subject to would cause add-in 1 to block that message. At that point, when we've changed the subject, we don't go back and reprocess that through all of the add-ins. So the message will go through at that point. And that's why the order of your add-ins is super important if you use multiple ones. So this is rolled out. This is available in Office 365 for a couple of months now, and you can start using this. We've had a couple of well-known third-party vendors as part of the development process, as part of the beta and preview process for this. So they should be updating their apps for this right now in OA. I get a lot of questions, okay, when is this coming to Outlook? When is this coming for the rest? It's on a longer-term roadmap. We talked with some of these vendors and they said, we can handle this for now. You've solved our OA problem. We'll continue to go with some of the older models for Outlook, et cetera. But our longer-term roadmap is to unify this across the Office suite. But we solved the add-in problem for now. For those of you on-prem that got stuck on Exchange 2010 because we couldn't solve this problem, this shipped in the March CU for Exchange 2016. So this is available on-prem now as well, and you now no longer have any excuse not to upgrade from Exchange 2010. Okay. All right, so I want to move on to my second major topic for today, which is hybrid. All right. This is the first experience that most customers have with Office 365, and first impressions, first experiences matter. And we've done a lot of good work in hybrid. The HCW now, for the hybrid config wizard, is easier to run than ever. The success rate that we have, the 5-star ratings, reviews that we have of the HCW are higher than ever. So it's great, and we're super happy about that. But there are still challenges. We still hear issues with hybrid. There are features that don't exist, that don't work. Right? We've heard from some customers that publishing hybrid endpoints are blockers. We can't do that. We don't want to allow that traffic into our network because it can't be pre-authenticated or some other reason. For smaller customers, IP and URL publishing can be hard. You may have to change your config. They may have outsourced this. It can be more expensive. You got to get a change request with your vendor, et cetera, et cetera. And then 70% of hybrid customers are all in. They've moved their mailboxes all to the cloud. And there's a challenge here that I think you're all familiar with. But let's start with one that I think you all know, which is hybrid delegation. Right? So here's a scenario. I think this is going to be familiar to everybody. Tom's a delegate for Sarah, who's the CEO. Right? And Mike moves Tom's mailbox to Office 365. And Sarah notices that Tom can't manage her calendar anymore. Who's familiar with this scenario? Who's angry with us for not fixing this scenario? So Mike's trying to figure out what went wrong, and he finds that what he did isn't supported. We've published this. It's a TechNet article. It's a KB article. It's not supported. Doesn't really matter. He's got hundreds of shared mailboxes, thousands of delegates. The chain goes on, and he's trying to figure out what does he do. And we've told you, hybrid is a long-term state. You can be in hybrid forever if you want. We believe in hybrid. We invest in hybrid. And you can migrate at your own pace. Don't worry about it. Migrate whenever you want, right? But this is super painful. And telling you that this isn't supported doesn't fix the problem. And you've been telling us this for a long time. In fairness to all of you, right? That's not a made-up example. That's what some delegate chains look like. We scanned Microsoft. We scanned some other large customers. There are delegate chains that go into the 3,000 and 4,000s. How do you figure out who to break? Where do you break that chain? Can you move all of them at the same time? Probably not. There's no migration option that can move all users at one time from large companies. It's not reasonable to move them all. It's not reasonable to go to all of your businesses and figure out, try to align those schedules and figure out when they move. Tracking down those relationships and figuring out who's got to go together is crazy. Again, I don't know what yelling into the storm means, but it sounds super frustrating. And you've been telling us this for years, right? 2 years ago, you said full mailbox access would be super nice. Could you please allow us to do full mailbox access? We did a quick scan of our support. You've been calling support about this. This is just what I could find in a 5-minute scan, right? So my team came around, as I said, we look at scenarios, right? These particular scenarios cut across multiple teams. They cut across Outlook, they cut across calendar, and they cut across directory synchronization. All different technologies, and that's where I come in, right? So let's try to do a demo on this one. Let's see what we can do. So I've got Outlook fired up. I'm in a cloud mailbox here. Let me actually just show you, just for the sake of it, get recipient ignite. All right. So I've got 4 users here that start with the word ignite. Right? 2 of them are user mailboxes in the cloud. 2 of them are on-prem. I've named them in such a way that I can do a demo. This is demoing for dummies, if any of you are preparing. Keep the name simple. And I'm in the one in the cloud. And I've decided I need to add a delegate to one of those on-prem mailboxes. So I'll go in, account settings, delegate access, and it'll bring up the people picker. And you see I added one earlier, just so I could get some of the synchronization that has to happen under the covers going. But let's add another one. And what you'll notice here is my UI is a little different than most of you are experiencing before. Does anybody notice what the difference is? No? Yeah. So if somebody sees it, there's no red circle on my users here. So I'm going to pick one of those on-prem mailboxes. I'm going to add it. I'm going to say OK. And Outlook's going to think about it for a while, and it's going to figure this out. Ask me what I want to do. Let's give him access to the calendar and the task. That's OK. And that's going to figure it out. So what we are giving you is the ability to do cross-premises delegation. And we'll go through the scenarios in a little bit deeper, and you see the changes that are starting to come here. And so as we go through each of the scenarios, I'll tell you when we're thinking about getting these out into the service. All right. We'll allow that to spin. We'll come back to it. Network's a little slow. This mailbox is somewhere in Europe at the moment. So there are a couple of common permission scenarios, 4 core permission scenarios that we want to work through here to improve this overall experience here. The first is full mailbox access, right? So this is well known. Just give an end user full mailbox access to another and make sure this works cross premises. Second is auto mapping, right? You're familiar with this. Automatically populate the mailboxes that you have full access to into your Outlook profile. Third is send as. And the last is send on behalf of. And talking with a lot of customers, they said, if we can make these scenarios work all the time in a hybrid state, this unblocks us from moving, and it helps us move faster, because we don't have to figure out the delegate chains. It doesn't matter who you move. And that's my goal here is, you sign up for Office 365 and Exchange Online, you run the hybrid config wizard, and 5 minutes later, you're moving mailboxes. And it doesn't matter which mailboxes you move, because all of your experiences still function in a hybrid state, even if you're accessing resources on premises. Right, so let's go into each one of these. Full mailbox access, right? General full access cross premises. So Mailbox 2 is granted full access to Mailbox 1, and the Mailbox 1 moves to the cloud. That still functions, right? That's great. The Mailbox 3 on-prem is granted full access to Mailbox 1, which is already in the cloud. That functions today as well. 2 and 3 then move to the cloud, still good. And then 4 is given full access and off-boarded for some reason. That still functions. This is actually a fully supported scenario today and has been for over a year. A lot of people don't know this. It took us a while to get the documentation updated, but it is currently correct out on TechNet and the doc site. So if you are using full mailbox access, this is fully supported today, and you can continue to use it. There was a challenge here with Outlook on the web, though. Right? You could have full access to a mailbox in a hybrid state, and you could potentially run into a problem with this one. So let's see if this scenario resonates with anybody. You're logged into your mailbox in the cloud, and you decide you want to get access to this to this mailbox that's on-prem. So you use Open Other Mailbox, and you choose your on-prem mailbox, and you get a redirection. And this is great. Gets you a redirection to your on-prem system. That's your on-prem URL. It would be nice if it was a silent single sign-on redirection, but this is how OA redirection has worked, and we're just using it. But we're getting you there. You click that link, you log on to your on-premises system, either forms-based or maybe it's Windows integrated, and then you get a redirection. And if you notice the URL, it's a redirection back to the cloud. That looks a little strange, but you want to play the scenario out. So you click it, and you're back in your own mailbox in the cloud. That's a strange scenario. Now, you have a workaround for this. You tell your users, use an explicit logon. Right? So instead of using this open other mailbox, go to your on-prem URL and type the explicit logon URL, mail.contoso.com, whack OA whack, on-prem mailbox at gwid1.net. Right? And that will get you into that mailbox. But this scenario should function, right? And it has to get fixed at step 3, which is get that redirection. We should give you that explicit logon URL in the redirection. And so we did. We fixed this, and this is rolled out in Office 365 now. It does require that in your organization relationship on the Office 365 side, you have target over URL populated. Previous versions of the HCW didn't do that for you. We populated the on-prem property for this, but not the cloud side. If you're running the latest version of the HCW, we'll also populate the cloud side target over URL and give you this redirection, including an explicit logon when you're doing a cross-premises mailbox access. So this is rolled out into the service. You may have actually seen it. I talked to a couple of people earlier this week that said we just saw that the other day. So know that this helps complete that full mailbox access scenario that we have. Thank you. All right, next scenario, full mailbox with automap. Right? So let's see how it works here today. Again, 2 is granted full access to 1, moves to the cloud, auto mapping still functions here. 3 is granted full access to mailbox 1, which is moved to the cloud, or already in the cloud, and that is broken. Doesn't work. You don't get the auto mapping. Full access, no problem, no auto mapping. 2 and 3 then move to the cloud. 2 continues to function, 3 still broken. 4 offboards, also broken here. Right? So customers fall on 2 different sides on this one. Some say this is super important, and others say we always turn this off. We just look at it as core part of the experience. We want to make sure that if you're using this, we don't want to break that experience in a hybrid state. So we need some changes here. And the changes here are largely in Azure Active Directory Connect. This is a synchronization problem because this rides off on top of a particular attribute, MS Exchange delegate list link and the associated backlinks, right? So effectively what we're doing is 2 things. We're making sure that we're writing this attribute back. So when you click, I'm going to run AAD Connect in hybrid, we will take this property and we will write it back to your on-prem directory with the extra set of attributes that are also written back when you click that hybrid box. We also want to make sure that this attribute gets synced on mail-enabled users. And that's super important because when you're doing hybrid access, when you're doing cross-premises access, the mailboxes that you're trying to access on the other side are mail-enabled users. They're not mailboxes. So we'll sync this property on MEUs as well. And the last bit is auto-discover. And this is something that a lot of people don't notice because the scenario is generally broken as well. But if you tried to do this today, if you tried to reverse engineer this even on-prem, you would find out that when you did auto-discover for a cross-premises or a cross-organization object against an MEU, we would return the primary mailbox, but not the archive mailbox within that XML that gets thrown back to you by auto-discover. So we'll fix that piece of this as well. The coding for this is mostly done, and we're looking for customers that actually want to test this with us in real life in preview. So if auto mapping is important to you and you're in a hybrid state today and you're ready to test this out, come see me afterwards. If you're interested in testing this with us in preview and beta, I'd like to get some customers signed up for that over the next couple of months as well. So see me afterwards and let me know if you want to test this with us. Send on behalf of, very similar problem. 2 gets access to 1, send on behalf of, moves to the cloud, and that functions. 3 is granted send on behalf of for 1, which is already in the cloud. You've got a broken scenario there. Move them both up. Now this functions again. Then 4 is granted access, moved on-prem, and this is broken. The challenge we have here is that when you do send on behalf of, we check your permissions, and we really check your permissions based on the existence of the public delegates attribute in the directory in which you are sending. So if you are on-prem sending on behalf of as somebody in the cloud, we check the local on-prem directory to determine if you have permissions to send as that user who's up in the cloud, right? There's another complication with this particular scenario is that you can go assign these permissions in a hybrid state, and the commandlets will function, but we don't throw you any errors, but the permissions don't work. So that's not a great admin experience either. So there's a couple of changes needed here. The public delegates attribute, do bi-directional synchronization of this. So when you set send on behalf of on a mailbox in the cloud, for example, we'll synchronize that back to on-prem to the mail-enabled user on-prem, and then set the associated backlinks, et cetera. And the last bit is make those MEUs acclable. Right? And that's what I was referring to when I was doing the demo, is my UI's changed and those users don't have their little red circle here. Right? So this is what it looks like for all of you today, is you want to assign delegate access, you go into Outlook and you go through the same experience that I did, and in that UI, in that people picker, all of your cross-premises mailboxes and users show up with this little red circle. And you try to use it and Outlook says, you can't do that. Right? So that's what we call acclable. The code for this is done. We are rolling this out in the next quarter, and you will get send on behalf of and the acclable experience. And the acclable experience is great because it allows you not only to pick people for send on behalf of, but to do this overall delegate experience and manage calendars as well. So let's go back to the demo real quick. Let's see if Outlook has figured itself out. All right, so Outlook figured itself out. We've gotten permissions. Let's switch mailboxes. Let's go to the on-prem mailbox. So this is the one I set up earlier, and as you notice, we have to do directory synchronization here. So I set one up a little bit earlier today, so a directory sync had time to kick in and make sure everything was synchronized appropriately in both directions. All right, so you'll notice I got the message here that says you've been granted delegate access for this mailbox in the cloud. You can manage the calendar. Let's go take a look at that calendar. So that was for Ignite Cloud Mailbox. Let's add that. It's going to go figure it out, and there I have the calendar. Let's add a new meeting. Schedule it with myself. Let's do a one-on-one in my office. And we'll make that for later today. Off you go. So that simple fix for send on behalf of, for acclable, enables these particular scenarios. Let's just do a quick send on behalf of. So let's do a mail. We'll make it from the cloud mailbox. I'm going to send it to myself because we're here. We don't have to switch. Let's do a test. Send that out, and we'll wait for that to go through the transport pipeline and peer back. So as I said, this particular scenario is going to start to roll out over the next quarter. So we should see it land worldwide in Exchange Online by the end of this calendar year as we roll it out through our rings of validation. As you notice here, send on behalf of works in a cross-premises scenario. Okay. So the last scenario I mentioned here in hybrid is send as. Again, let's walk through it. 2 is granted send as to mailbox 1, move to the cloud, this functions. 3 is granted send as to mailbox 1, that's broken. They move to the cloud, 2 works, 3 fails. 4 is moved back on-prem, that continues, that fails as well. I think what you've all noticed here, if you were watching here, is relationships that get set up prior to migration, prior to onboarding, generally continue to function, which is great. But you onboard new users, you offboard users, you move back and forth. So we have to make this more of a holistic experience for hybrid, especially if we truly believe that hybrid is going to be a long-term or indefinite state for some, if not many of you, right? So like send on behalf of, this is a permissions challenge, right? We want to check the local permissions to determine whether or not you have send on behalf of capability. So it's a sync problem. But unlike send on behalf of, this is not a directory synchronization problem because send as permissions are stored in the access control list or the exchange security descriptor, the AD security descriptor. So we need to keep permissions in sync, right? So that's a particular challenge when it's not something that we can just solve with AAD Connect. So we're working through this. There's a viable workaround for this today, which is you can just do this twice. Add recipient permission in the cloud, add AD permission on-prem. And since this is an admin-driven function, you can go do that when your users request send as permissions for another object. We've talked to some customers and they say, okay, the workaround's viable. We do have a self-service portal that allows customers to select this, but it's driven by a provisioning engine under the covers, right? So they go modify the provisioning engine to do that dual reg. We want to make this a little bit easier, and we have an idea of how to solve this, and we're going to come back to this in a little bit because it requires some other changes that we're working on. So keep this one in mind, but also keep the workaround for this one in mind as well. But as we think about the rest of hybrid, we've got some more commentary for users here. Migration was a nightmare. It took 20 months, or it took 20 different locations and months to get proxy setups, configurations done correctly. The administration of hybrid is a little problematic, right? That's being nice, that's a very pleasant way to put it. This one on the right I like. We've only set up the hybrid environment at this point. We'll be moving mailboxes in the near future, right? This was a direct quote from a customer 8 months ago. As of this morning, they have 150 mailboxes moved. This is a 6,000 seat company. Right? So in 8 months, they've managed to set up hybrid and move 150 mailboxes. That obviously doesn't meet my criteria of moving mailboxes as fast as possible. So there's a set of features in this particular vein that we're working on here. First one I'll call is organization config transfer. Right? So let's bring Mike back. He's onboarding his users to Exchange. He's got some on-prem customization. He's been in Exchange on-prem for years. Right? So he's got OA mailbox policies, active sync policies, retention policies, you name it, he's done it all. Right? You land in Exchange Online, this is a greenfield environment. None of that customization you've done on-prem for all of the years you've been running it exists. He doesn't know what the experience is going to be like. He's got to reset all of this stuff. So migrations are delayed. Sarah's not happy because she can't get her ROI. Mike spends a whole bunch of time customizing Exchange Online, recreating his on-prem policies, and then he's got to do some dual administration to keep them in sync. He wants them to be the same. He wants the experience to be as close to the same as possible. So he creates a policy, a mailbox policy. When he changes that in one location, he's got to change it in both locations. Dual administration. It's possible, but it's a pain. Right? So this is a challenge we want to solve for you. We want to bring that organization config from the cloud, from on-prem into the cloud, right? So we'll take all of those objects, OA mailbox policies, active sync policies, records management policies, and we'll ask you, which ones of those do you want to transfer into the cloud? And we'll bring them in for you with the same configuration. And that'll be an admin configurable set, so you decide which ones you want to do. And then, over time, we want to see us solve that dual administration problem. My goal for customers that are in hybrid for any period of time, whether it's short or indefinite, is to give you a single admin plane. Come to the cloud, do your administration, and if that action is supposed to happen on-prem, we will send it there automatically and have that same action done for you on-prem. Right? So you'll start to see us layer this in over time. The eventual first release of this will have a couple of object properties, maybe start with the OA mailbox policies and the active sync policies, and we'll layer on other things over time. We'll get to transport rules, and we'll get that a dual administration problem solved over time. So look for incremental updates to this from us over the next 12 to 18 months as we make this more mature. Next scenario here is something called mailbox config transfer. right? So Mike migrates users to Exchange Online and he realizes the individual user customization doesn't get transferred with the user. Again, unsure about the experience, migrations are delayed, Sarah is not happy, and Mike spends a whole bunch of time writing post-processing scripts. Migrate a mailbox, then run these scripts to reset OA mailbox policy, reset retention policy, turn off active sync, turn off POP, turn off IMAP, right? It takes them forever to do that, and it's a pain. Well, we've already done the work. We've brought in those objects for you. Why can't we assign those to the users at the time they migrate? Well, we can. Right? After we get that org config transfer done, we'll enable MRS to do this for you. We just extend the list of properties that MRS configures at the end of that migration, right? And then reapply that customization to the individual mailbox at the time the migration gets finalized. And we'll make this a customizable list per migration batch. If you want to match the OA mailbox policies and make sure those get assigned, but say the cloud users get a different retention policy, for example, you can mix and match these objects as we bring across. So this is something you'll see us layer on over time as we get the org config transfer done. We'll layer on mailbox config transfer on top of that. Okay. So next one is hybrid publishing and security. We hear this from a lot of customers, is that IP whitelisting is a challenge, right? Exchange Online has got to talk to Exchange on-prem, and that IP whitelisting might be a challenge for some customers. It's a large number of IP addresses, and you've got to keep up with all of the changes. If you don't keep up with the new range that we put into Exchange Online, you may have a broken experience. And it's a large number of ranges. For some customers, they say that feels insecure to me. It's so large. How do I know it's just Exchange, right? Most of you know, you've seen our architectures, Exchange is deployed on bare metal, but they always ask us, when's Exchange going into Azure? And if it goes into Azure, does that mean we have to whitelist all of Azure? Now, I'm not up here saying Exchange is going into Azure, but you get the point, right? It's a large number of IP addresses, and you're trusting us to say, these IP addresses are just Exchange, right? And that makes some customers a little bit nervous. Firewall isn't quite Swiss cheese, it's really one port in this case, but they don't like that. Some customers also don't like the fact that that traffic comes through unauthenticated. They say, no traffic comes through our firewall to an on-prem system unless you can pre-authenticate it. And with hybrid, as you know, we can't pre-authenticate that, especially on the free busy side, right? Customers have to allow that direct access to their internal servers, and it just becomes another attack vector that customers don't like and they're queasy about, if you will. Along with that, we have customers that just can't deal with the complexity around this. The average seat count for a customer in a hybrid that runs the HCW is 105, right? Because this is the gateway to the cloud. Now, these customers, they're the ones that are all in, right? But it's complex today. As good as the HCW is, right? It's still difficult. These customers, small customers, don't have auto-discover EWS published properly, right? They don't have third-party certificates configured. They just want to onboard, and that's what I want for them too. Run the HCW, 5 minutes later, move a mailbox. Nothing else, right? Make it simple, right? This is just too much of a burden, right? So we're working on a solution for this one. Here's the current experience today. Open those ports through the firewall, manage DNS, publish auto-discover. You might have to change your on-prem config, get the right client access config, publish for auto-discover properly. We want to change this so that this is an outbound connection from your on-prem systems. So imagine this, right? When you run the HCW, it establishes an outbound connection to Office 365 to create a hybrid tunnel that we can use. The endpoint is then a Microsoft-owned URL that we can use to target hybrid requests for free busy, for mailbox moves, for example. No inbound reports are required for this, and no configuration changes on-prem. The only thing that has to happen here is the server that this connector runs on has to have 443 outbound access to Microsoft. Right? So we'll dig into this in a little bit, but that's our goal here. That's what we're working on in a hybrid state. Right? So here's another scenario, hybrid recipient management. You've heard about Exchange Online. You want to move? Our account team does their job. They've enlightened you. This is great. You deploy. Everybody's happy. You've comprehended the awesomeness of Exchange Online, and now you're all in. You want to get rid of Exchange on-prem, and you find out you're stuck. There's no way out of hybrid. You want to change an email address on a user. You are stuck with that on-prem system. You need to keep that Exchange server on-prem to do that administration. How many people are angry about this one? Right? So you call support, try to go it alone. You'll call us eventually, right? Oh, let's go back. There needs to be a way out of hybrid. For some customers, it's a transitional state, and it has to be a transitional state. As I said before, 70% of hybrid customers are all in the cloud, and yet we force you to keep that server on-prem. So we want to solve this one for you as well, right? This was some top feedback after Ignite for last year, right? So it's time to solve this one. That's where my team comes in, is solving these challenges that cut across a number of different scenarios. This is recipient management. This is directory synchronization, right? So a number of different technologies play in here, right? So you know the current experience. So we have two paths to solve this problem. So here's what we want to do is the admin attempts to manage a user in Office 365. What we'll do is push that change to on-prem. That's where a new hybrid architecture comes in, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail in a slide or two. That change gets written to your on-prem system, and then AAD Connect will bring that change back to the cloud as if you had created that change on-prem, right? So you've done the administration in the cloud. It kind of happens on-prem as we push that change to on-prem to, let's say, change that email address, and then we'll sync that back up to the cloud to complete the loop. When this happens, if this happens, no, when this happens, because we're doing this, right? This will allow you to eliminate that last Exchange server on-prem for hybrid administration. Right? There's another way we can solve this problem, is change the source of authority on these objects. So in my previous scenario, we wrote the changes to on-prem, publishing it through this new hybrid connector we're talking about, and then synchronized it back. We could also just change the source of authority in AAD Connect to say, just allow these changes on-prem. We're working through the full details of all of this and the full design. The very likelihood is that we actually have to do both of these, right? And we'll do both of these. And the reason for that is that this idea of doing a change in Office 365 that gets pushed to on-prem works for other scenarios here too. This is where that send as problem can get fixed here. You can do send as in the cloud, for example, run that administrative activity in the cloud, and then we'll realize that that also has to get written on-prem and push it down through the connector and do that same activity on-prem. So that's my long-term goal for all of you in a hybrid state, is a unified administration plane. Come to Office 365 for all of your Exchange administration, and if it has to happen on-prem, we will push that on-prem for you. So no more dual administration, one administrative plane if you're in a hybrid state for the long term. So what's the backbone look like? Here's just a visual of this. You've got this hybrid connector. We make an outbound connection to a proxy relay. You can think of this as Azure App Proxy. I'm going to call it an Exchange hybrid connector. It's not quite Azure App Proxy, but a lot of the technology is similar here. For those of you that know, Azure App Proxy gives you the ability to publish an on-prem system from an Azure Proxy endpoint in the cloud. So we make that outbound connector. Then the tenant admin or somebody in the tenant does a hybrid activity here. They'll look to make an admin change, send as, do some of this recipient administration, or just a free busy lookup. The hybrid service in Exchange will talk to that proxy endpoint, which is a URL that we own in the cloud, right? Gets pushed down through that connector that's been established to the hybrid connector on-prem, and we'll pass that off to the hybrid service, and that hybrid service is Exchange, it's MRS proxy. It's an LDAP module that we create that does that dual administration, that writes to your directory to do things like send as or change a primary SMTP address or something like that. We service the request, and then the scenario gets completed. So the backbone, right, that first hybrid connector, the Exchange hybrid connector, established as an outbound connection, is the core of this. And that's the first thing that we're working on over the next couple of months. And you'll start to see more information from this, from us over the next couple of months, going into preview sometime in the early portion of next calendar year. Here. Right. So the last thing I want to talk about today is mergers and acquisitions. Here. This is a good problem to have. Exchange Online Office 365 adoption has been massively successful, in my opinion, right? Everybody's moving to the cloud, right? But it's still a problem for us, right? It creates a problem is that you can't acquire businesses and do mergers and do divestitures easily, right? You either have to offboard from the cloud, you have to buy third-party software. It's complex. There are fundamental challenges in doing this generally basic activity in the cloud. And the rub of this is that this is actually fairly easy on-prem. Right? This is a case where Exchange Online is worse than on-prem today. You can do things like share domains on-prem. Doesn't matter if you don't own the domain, right? You can add any accepted domain to your organization on-prem if you want to, right? And do some of that basic functionality, that activity that is required in an M&A type scenario here. And a lot of you have been reaching out for us to help. Talked to some customer earlier this week that said they do on the order of 10 to 15 acquisitions a month over the entire year. Super painful for a customer of that size and that volume. Right? So we have a vision here. In-product M&A tech at both a workload and a suite level. So if you want to do M&A just for Exchange, we'll give you the capability to do that. If you want to do it at the suite level, we'll give you the capability to do that. So let's go to a demo. So I've got some tenants up in Office 365. That's not the one. I've got two tenants here. I've got Best for You Organics, and I've got Worldwide Importers. And the scenario here is Worldwide Importers has decided to acquire Best for You Organics. Right? So if I look at the source side, I've got some mailboxes. Okay, so a handful of mailboxes on the source side, Best for You Organics. I have another custom attribute here. I've grouped them by custom attribute 2 into various waves of migration. Right? Now over on the target side, I've got some mailboxes over here as well. Right? And so these are all Worldwide Importer mailboxes. Now I've done directory synchronization here. So as part of this M&A activity, we want to have a unified GAL, and the customer has decided we can do the directory synchronization, right? So I've got some mail users here as well. And you see I've got the mail users for the source side, for the Best for You Organic side, right? And these are the users I want to start to move across, right? So let's enable that. So I pre-staged some move requests. I've got some move requests in from one tenant in Office 365 to another, and you see they're sitting in a sync state. This is live code in Office 365. It's obviously not enabled for all of you, but this is not mocked up. This is live code in Office 365 today, and these are real tenants here. Right? So we can move the mailboxes cross premises. You see they've gone into a sync state. Now if we look at the properties of these mailboxes, or these move requests, you'll see a couple of new things here. You'll see we've got a request style of cross org, and in flags, we've got a new flag here called cross tenant. This is something that we've created. So if you want to see all of the move requests in your tenant that are going cross tenant, we can do that with flags. And that will bring up all of the move requests that are going across two tenants here. So let's finish this up. So I'll just change the complete after date to null. MRS will come in and pick this up in a minute and finish these migrations. All right, so let's let that run. Let's go back to the source, and let's look at a couple of other things. I'm going to do get organization relationship. And I'm going to bring out a couple of properties of this. domain names. Yep. So, sorry. Thank you. Sorry. Let's do it that way. All right. So a couple properties that are important here. One of the things we want to make sure of is that when two tenants are moving mailboxes between them, that the two tenants agree that they can move mailboxes between them, and that they both agree. So we'll call that dual key authorization, right? And we're using organization relationships to do that authorization. So a couple of things here. We key off domain names. A lot like free busy requests across two organizations, we need to make sure that the domain names for the users that are matching exist on these org relationships so that we can match them up and do the moves for those users cross premises. Right? Mailbox move enabled, obviously that has to exist on these org relationships to allow the moves. And then this new property here called mailbox move capability. And you'll see I've got two properties here, remote inbound, remote outbound. This is the key that we use on both sides of the org relationship to determine who can initiate a move and whether or not those moves are authorized. And I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute here. But let's go back. Let's see if we've got these moves done. In progress still. Well, they're going. So let's let that go. I'll go back to explain move authorization a little bit while we let those moves finish up. Right, so what we want to make sure is that both sides agree that you can move mailboxes between them. And so what we've added here is the mailbox move capability, which has 4 possible values: remote inbound, remote outbound, inbound, and outbound. And this is the dual key authorization that says we can move between two tenants, and here's the direction. Remote outbound says I'm going to allow somebody to pull moves out of my tenant. Remote inbound is somebody can push moves into my tenant. And then likewise, inbound and outbound say, I can pull from somebody else and create a move inside my tenant, or I can push outbound from my tenant to somebody else. And these have to match up. So if I'm moving between these two tenants, I need remote outbound on one side, and I need inbound on the other side. Right? And if these don't match, we're going to fail that authorization. Domain names, obviously those need to match up. If you caught it in my demo there, I had the domain names, I also had a GUID. That's code in progress. You won't need to use GUIDs at the time we release this, right? So just domain names, either the tenant name, the onmicrosoft.com tenant name, or the vanity domain names that you use have to be in there as well. The authorization gets checked at multiple times during this whole process. So the moves get checked and that authorization gets checked during injection, during incremental synchronization, and at finalization. And what that does is allow the admin on either side to revoke authorization and fail those moves at any point. If they have a crisis of confidence, if the deal falls apart, whatever it happens to be, somebody can revoke authorization and the moves will fail immediately. We don't have to worry about moves get completed, let's move them back, all of that stuff. So that dual key authorization exists and it persists across the entire life cycle of these moves until they're completed. So let's go back, let's see if we got this. Just to complete the scenario, there we go. And now if I do get mailbox on this side, you'll see I've got those two mailboxes. Let's actually make it a little easier. So let's add custom attribute 1 and the display name, and you'll see those two mailboxes from Best for You have moved cross-tenant. Here. So cross-tenant moves tab. So what's ahead for this, right? And it's a long road. This is live code, this functions, but I want to temper your excitement a little bit. Actually releasing functionality for you to do this is still a ways out. We're thinking about the M&A problem holistically here, and we think about it in the same way that all of you think about it, which is you've got your lead up, you've got that day one, and on that day one, send the entire company mail, show you're available, find users in the directory, share domains. That's the most common scenario in M&A or divestiture. For some period of time, these two organizations have what's called a Transition Services Agreement, or TSA, that says, well, I own the domain here, but for a period of time, you can continue to use it. And the users can continue to use it for a short period of time. That's the TSA period. And so when we move users cross premises, those users have to be able to maintain that email address with the source domain for some period of time. And that's going to require either a complex address rewrite capability outside of Office 365, or make it simple and allow you to share domains. So that's in our planning here. We want to make sure that that functions before we start bringing some of this capability to bear for you, a GA, within the service. And obviously move domains, users, and content. Right? So I said we're working on this from a workload perspective. We're working on this from a suite level perspective. Obviously, at the end game here, we want to give you the ability to do this in product at a suite level perspective. So we're working very closely with our partners in SharePoint and Teams and the rest, and Azure Active Directory to create a holistic scenario here. We've got a little bit of a head start on some of the M&A tech inside Exchange, and I wanted to make sure you got a glimpse into what we're working on and where we're going with the roadmap on this one for the future. So that's what I wanted to show you today. That's our roadmap. That's some of the features as they're coming out over the next 6, 12, 18 months. Who's got questions? If you can use the mic for the folks that have questions.
Thanks for adding all new features. One thing we didn't cover about group membership, which is a big for the users can't edit their members from the Outlook.
Yeah.
And there is no way to edit. They need to go to the AD and then update.
Yeah, so at the moment, I don't have a feature in my roadmap on group membership, but I've heard it. I know other teams have heard it as well, so it's something that we'll take away and think about.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, this way. Yep.
So question about moving cross-tenant. So I have my original email address, and now I moved into my target tenant. What happens to the emails of Ken at original address? What happens to that? Do I take my address with me, or does that automatically forward?
Yeah, so that's what I was talking about there at the end, is we do want to get to a point where we can allow two tenants to share a domain, and that would allow you to bring the email address. Doesn't exist today, but that's something that we want to solve.
Thank you.
Yep.
From a holistic approach, did you think about for the M&A from if there's a M&A done and one organization is on-prem, but another organization that they're moving to is 365, would that be part of the whole, I guess, approach to have that capability in place?
Sorry, I don't quite understand. You said one organization is on-prem?
Yeah, so like one of the things that we're doing right now is like our organization is primarily on-prem, and one of the divestitures that we've done is they're going to 365. So they asked us, can we move directly to 365? I said, no, that's not possible. Basically, we have to move you into your own on-prem organization because we also have a tenant in our environment. So we have to move them to their own separate on-prem environment, and they have to move them into their own.
Right. So the challenge here is that you're acquiring an organization that's in Office 365. Right. You're primarily in on-prem, but you're in hybrid. You've got some users in the cloud. So this is effectively two tenants in the cloud.
Correct.
And that's the scenario we want to solve here, is instead of taking that source and offboarding them on-prem and then back into your tenant or using third-party tools, allow us to do that tenant-to-tenant migration.
Right.
That's the scenario we're looking to solve here. That's exactly the scenario.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in your example, say both companies are actually using hybrid. What happens to the mail-enabled user on the source Active Directory once you move the mailbox from his tenant to the other tenant?
What happens to the object in the source after we move the mailbox out, even if it's in hybrid?
Right.
In that case? Yeah, so the move will convert that to a mail-enabled user, and we have to work through what Azure Active Directory Connect does in that particular scenario. So we're still working through the exact details on that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Yes?
You gave some dates on when some of the new features are going to be available. Is the same thing for the Gov tenants, or is that additional delay?
Yeah, so all of the features that I work on roll out worldwide at the same time. So something like client access rules gets worldwide, including Gov tenants, at the same time as the rest of the service. Hybrid delegation, the same thing. At this point, anything that I've talked about today, I don't have a different timeline for Gov than I do for worldwide.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, are there going to be any restrictions on the version of the on-premise Exchange environment for all of these features that you're fixing, or is that going to be coming also to Exchange 2010, 2013, 2016, or do you need to be on 2016?
It depends on some of the scenarios. So one of the things, it's a good question. So for example, ACLable, right? When you're in a hybrid state and you want to be able to pick users cross premises, as we move users, they have to be left in an ACLable state. That's actually in Exchange 2013 today. I think it's, I don't remember what CU, it was a couple months ago, it shipped in a CU. So when you enable that and you move a user from on-prem to the cloud, it leaves the MEU on-prem as ACLable. That's only in Exchange 2013 and forward in that case. For 2010, we're going to publish some scripts. You can actually go into the directory and flip objects to ACLable if they're MEUs. But yeah, there will be cases where you need more recent, more modern versions of Exchange on-prem. And we'll make that clear as we roll them out. Yeah, sorry, in the back, go ahead.
The claims rule, or the client access rules, will they replace the ADFS claims rules?
It's not a straight replacement per se. I think there's still value, certainly value to continue to use those and prevent authentication, right? So one of the big differences between client access rules and the rest is that client access rules actually fires post-authentication, right? So there's still value in using AAD conditional access or ADFS rules to limit access at the time of authentication. We just want to make sure we close that gap to make sure that that conditional access persists through the life of the end user session and not just at the time of authentication. So I don't think it really replaces them, but it enhances them as well. And we're working on a long-term roadmap of client access rules across the suite and across AAD to create more of a unified suite experience. Yes?
Yeah, we've gone through some considerable pain with getting our connector set up, and to be honest, we thought we had it, and then it broke again. What ended up happening, we're Exchange 2010, we had to put an edge transport server in our DMZ for the connector piece, and it's still not working. When this outbound thing that you're talking about takes effect, are we going to have to reconfigure that yet again?
So for edge transport, you're talking about SMTP. I didn't spend any time talking about SMTP today. So right now I don't have a lot of plans. I don't have any plans to do SMTP over the connector, but it's certainly something that we can think about if that's a challenge for some customers. I do find for customers that are doing SMTP, and especially on-prem, they already have an entry point for this. So it isn't top of my list, but it's something I'll take the feedback away and we'll certainly think about it.
Okay, because the way our mail flow starts with proof point and it's coming in through on-prem, and the way we have the connector set up now, everything from the internet's going to come in through on-prem and then out to the cloud. But the connector piece, as far as I understood it, that one connector piece, it's pretty much all SMTP, is it not?
There's multiple protocols going on, but let's talk a little bit more about this. Okay, sorry, running out of time. One more question, and I'll stick around for the rest of you, so don't go away. In the back.
Hi. This may have been a repeat for as far as the delegates go and the permissions. Hybrid 2016 setup, but our mailboxes are on 2010. Will that stuff work?
Yes, it will. Short answer. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all very much. If you got other questions, come see me.